Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Behind the Veil, a show that provides insight into the world of weddings. I'm your host, Keith Willard. Welcome back to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about whether or not you actually need a wedding planner. I mean, it seems to be a big question, especially in this day and age of do-it-yourself brides and couples. I mean, why not? You're able to do the research on your vendors, you're able to do the research on your venues, and you're able to produce timelines all online. So why would you really need an event planner? Well, there's lots of reasons. And then on the event planner side, there's more services than ever that are being offered. Everything from full service planning to day of logistics. But what does that really mean? And what should you be really expecting when booking these particular services? So I'm so happy to have Bettina from Busy Bee Events as part of our guest today. But before I introduce her, let me introduce Marcy Gutenberg with An Affair to Remember by Marcy. Hi, Marcy. Welcome back.
Pete?
Yay! So here we are again. Where this is part of our Wedding 101 series about the basics of wedding planning, and we've talked about DJs, we've talked about photography, we've talked about timelines. Now we're going to be talking about wedding planning, which is kind of close to both of our hearts.
Right, and I mean,
we both do it.
Essential for planning any kind of an event, but especially weddings. I mean.
Yeah, but I mean, in this day and age, there's more options there's so many more options available online. And now that more and more people are at home being able to do it yourself, so to speak, online, does it make sense to have an event professional involved? And that's a mixed bag, honestly. Yes. And so I'm really excited to introduce Bettina with the Busy Bee Events. She is the owner of Busy Bee Events and a favorite on Behind the Veil. So it's good to have you back on the show. Hi.
Thank you for having me back. It's such a pleasure, and congratulations on everything you've achieved. I'm so happy for you both. It's incredible.
Oh, well, we are just so excited that you're back on the show. I mean, you were with us a year and 3 months ago, almost. Oh my God, it's been a long time. I know it feels, but I felt like you were the perfect match to talk about the event planning world, because you've got some things that you're doing on the side that I think are very helpful for people that are trying to do this on their own, which we're going to talk about soon. But the thing is that we try to have these honest conversations about whether or not people need certain services in their life. And one of the number one things that people try to cross out of their budget is an event planner, right? They think, right, well, I can do that. Why can't I do that? And to be honest, why wouldn't they? Because everything is supposedly available online. But I'm going to actually bring up one of the points that you brought up right before we went online is no wedding police. Talk a little bit more about your thought process behind no wedding police.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my favorite, well, not my favorite, but a top call I consistently receive when, the season comes up and, we have new client calls is hey, I wasn't originally going to get a planner, but now I am because I realized how much work it entails. And I'm like, yep, full-time job just based on that exact fact. So it does take a lot of time, and there are resources that can be helpful, but the resources have to be up to date, first of all, because there's a lot of out-of-date resources. I think trends go so quickly in the wedding industry, and not only in regard to aesthetics, but also how to do things, how important certain aspects are to the vendor. And not only that, furthermore from that is wedding policing is what I call it. There is no one in the industry that is policing what people are saying on their websites.
Right?
A vendor can say like, oh, I am the best at this, and I've preferred vendors at all these top venues. And I reached out to them before, and I've asked, hey, have you heard of this vendor? And they're like, no.
They're like, who are you talking about? And I feel like that's like kind of a number one thing is that I encourage all of my clients to do as much as they can possibly to prepare for their own wedding. Yeah. But how do you trust what you see or read on the internet? I mean, if you're not somebody that's in this world that is used to or know of people in this world, you're just supposed to trust what you read on the internet, because if it's on the internet, it has to be true.
Right. Obviously, like Wikipedia is always right. But yeah, it honestly, you know, we used to say review based, but also with reviews, it can always have friends write reviews too. And that's where people lean towards a planner, like for the recommendation. So that's a pro to hiring a planner, but there are also other methods of going about hiring vendors too. So it's really based on how much time you have on your hands, and essentially, to me at least, because you could find the information, but you have to dig deep, and you even can lean onto the venue. But again, a big point to bring up that I'm asked all the time is, what's the difference between a venue coordinator versus a wedding planner? And there's huge difference.
Well, and I usually say that, you know, a hotel that says, hey, look, we are going to provide a coordinator that helps you coordinate your event. But at the end of the day, their boss is the hotel, right? And if you have somebody that is your, let's say, day of logistics person, they answer to you. They're your advocate. They're the bride's advocate. They're not answering to the hotel. And, you know, and sometimes people have to
remember that.
Think about that. But, you know, I want to go back to your comment about time, because I think that the biggest question when it comes to whether or not to hire an event planner or an event professional really comes down to time. How much time do you have to do research? How much time do you have to do timelines? And I'm going to give you a little shout out actually here, because you started this course for brides and couples to be able to plan their own wedding. But it does really come down to time, because it is a 40-hour course.
Yeah,
it's
40 lessons long. But essentially what I was seeing, especially during COVID and hard times, is like, it's time, but also your budget. So depending on your budget, sometimes people are not able to hire a planner, or are not able to have time to find a planner, and or even finding resources online. So what I've been noticing is I'll have phone calls with potential clients who just couldn't at all afford a planner, let alone a full service planner, which I know we'll talk about in detail the difference. But I was trying to think of a way how we can still help them and yet not be like physically there answering all their emails and phone calls. So that's when I started leaning towards an online course to teach people how to plan a wedding if they're just not able to afford a planner but really need that help. An example I always give is like a house wedding. So if you're planning, or a park wedding, if you're like planning on having a wedding at your house, you don't think about the small details. Like the biggest thing to me is power. And I know you guys have experience with power before, because it's so easy to blow a fuse. And not only that, like I had an Isla Morada wedding, and it's an actual
Isla Morada. Oh my God, kill me now.
Yep, anyway. And their grids are pretty closely in the city, and so if you blow one grid, you blow the whole cities. So when you're doing a residential wedding, even if it's an Airbnb, it's important to know where your outlets are in the vicinity, and like making sure not to plug into the same grids and blowing the fuse, which is a big thing, part of my course to explain. So but yet you are only having 10 people and want to allocate to the food and not a planner. So that's when I put together this course to help those who are just not able to afford one, who has time to go through the course and to use it.
Well, and I have to say that when you first put out this course, I was always a fan of it. And I'm going to just put that out there, like for sure. Like, guys, I was a huge fan of Bettina putting out her own course. And I actually was a little like, shit, I should have done that myself. Good for you kind of thing.
Thank you.
But it is meant for very specific kind of clientele, people that are wanting to do their own event, that have the time to do their own event. But at the end of the day, I will always encourage people, like, look, even if you don't feel like you need an event planner, I feel like you need to at least have a session with an event pro to at least talk about your event and to get some insight, because you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
At the end of the day.
Oh, absolutely. Especially if it's like an Airbnb and you have no idea, no one's leading you in the direction of how to do a wedding at this place, which is
Right.
why also as part of the course, I also talk about how to hire a wedding planner if it feels that you will need one. But
Right.
something to me that's so important, no matter the wedding, no matter the budget, is to always have a day of coordinator. That's just so essential for everyone to have, because you don't want your mom, your aunt, a
It's
bridesmaid
the
running in
worst.
saying
It's
your
the
cake is not
worst.
what you want, or the centerpieces are wrong, and you're literally in the middle of hair and makeup. You're like, what? And so, like, you don't want that. So you want someone to take care of that. So and throughout the whole course and every time I talk on Instagram or wherever, I
Right.
always say have a day of. It's so important.
Well, but okay, so that actually leads me into an interesting part of our conversation. Let's say that you are a bride, you're looking at your wedding and you're thinking, well, I can do a lot of this. Maybe I just need a day of. I think that it's important that our couples out there that are listening to us understand what the responsibilities are as far as your services that are provided.
Yeah.
And when I hear day of, I hear that the bride is responsible for handling and doing all of the contracts and literally everything up until you hand it over to a person and say, this is my timeline and these are the people that are involved in my day. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree completely. That's how I operate day of as well. A big thing in the industry as well is the term day of,
Right.
which I find very interesting because our team specifically starts 6 weeks before the wedding, but I know a lot of other planners do 4 weeks or,
Right.
Even 3 weeks. But
Right.
when people come to me saying, oh, you don't just do day of, you just don't come on the day of. I'm like, oh, no. We don't just show up without a timeline. There's like a whole process to gathering the contracts. And
Right.
because we are just starting with you and we have that 6 weeks or the 4 weeks because we're getting to know you, but also fix anything that needs to be fixed because it was oversights or, didn't realize, because we do this every day versus the clients who are only having one wedding, of course, in their life, knock on wood. But, we as day of have to kind of like sift through what is correct and what needs to be changed. And so the biggest part is definitely we don't handle contracts, final payments. My team doesn't mind, giving a tipping guide if you're going to tip the vendors, which is also a great topic. Like if that's required, it's a service industry, but providing those like insights as to what to expect on the day. I even created like a document that goes over every small detail you could potentially have on a wedding day, because Pinterest is a friend and a foe, right? So
yes, it is.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I have the Pinterest chats and they're like on there at midnight. I'm like, get off. Don't do Pinterest at midnight.
I don't think that most people realize actually how much is involved in the event planning and the nuances that happen. I mean, I tell people all the time that a typical wedding has over 5,000 pieces attached to it, decisions and options, etc. And that typically, if I was going to do a full planning wedding, it's between 400 and 800 hours of planning time. And that's on the short end. I mean, I have a wedding right now that I'm doing at the Perez Art Museum. I'm into like the 1,500 hour mark at this point, and we're still 6 months away, and I just want to stab myself in the brain. Anyway.
Tell us how you really feel, Keith.
I mean, it's gonna be stunning. It is gonna be stunning.
The venue's incredible, but you gotta bring everything.
But there's a lot of pieces that go into this, and and not just the vendors, but insurance, oversight, city officials, all that stuff that comes with an art museum. So but I'm going to go back to your at-home wedding, right? So when people are thinking about their at-home wedding, I don't think people realize that there's HOAs to deal with.
Right.
Your
noise ordinance. Yeah.
Noise ordinance.
Yeah.
Trash, right? What do you do with all the trash? Cleanup. Even for load in, load out. So because a lot of times HOAs have very specific guidelines on the times that you're allowed to have trucks to come in and leave.
Exactly. Or valet, if you have guests coming and you don't have enough space for them. And also, if you do have space, are they parked correctly because they're drinking at the end of the day?
Right.
So, like, do you really want to provide that kind of like parking environment? Are you responsible for it? There are just so many small details that come with the house, especially. The big one to me is always the noise ordinance. They like want to go till like 3 a.m. because it's a house, but there's neighbors. Which is wary of.
And sometimes that's as easy as a little note that goes to the neighbors and said, "Hey, we're having a wedding, do you want to come and join us?" kind of thing. But I feel like a good event planner or wedding planner or even a day of person would remind them of that to say, "Hey, why not reach out to it?" I mean, Marcy, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, just going back to the day of planner, just that little aspect alone, having somebody go over everything the day of, it just would not, it wouldn't work because you're not familiarizing yourself with all the material and all the logistics that are going to happen that day. You're already in the thick of everything. So that is the essential of why everything needs to be done ahead of time so that you're not, so a planner is familiar with everything and is there to give you the best potential that you can have.
Yeah, but what about your sister? Let's say my sister said she's going to do my wedding for me. She did my other sister's wedding, and it was amazing. It was amazing.
You never know what you're going to get. When I was working in the hotels, I had a client that they came in. They said that they're a wedding planner, and I asked, okay, how, who are you working with? How many weddings have you done? And I asked the essentials. And one of the things is that she had done her either friend's wedding or her sister's wedding, but she wanted to put an ice carving in the middle of a dance floor. And anybody who is a professional would know that you cannot put an ice carving in the middle of the dance floor. First of all, you have liability, which is huge. Slippage, the water's going to get everywhere. People are going to fall. There's liability involved. There's just a multitude of problems. And as we talked about earlier, even the floor getting buckled and so forth. So, those are things that, most hotels would not be able to accommodate with, but more importantly, you're putting your guests at risk. Yeah, and those are the things that as a professional that we pay attention to.
Yeah, but there is the person on the other side of this argument that says, you really could do this wedding without having to hire a pro. Pros typically a day of will run $800 to $3,500. Depending on the pro and what they're doing for the day of. And I'm saying day of. I'm not saying full planning. I'm saying day of. That is a big. And I'm playing devil's advocate here. That is a big portion of some people's budgets. Most weddings, they say, are under $20,000. They say more than 80% of weddings that are held in the United States are under $20,000, which I find amazing considering some of the budgets that I have to deal with. But, I look at 20 grand and I'm like, is it a party for 20? Between the flowers and the liquor and what have you. But I also understand it. $3,500 is a big chunk of change,
right?
To hand somebody to say, okay, now make my world a reality. Oh wait, you're not there to make my world a reality. You're just there to make sure that the logistics go well. How do you defend that?
I defend it in my way, saying like the pleasure of waking up and knowing you don't have to deal with anything is insurmountable to anything else. It's like knowing that you hired a professional to take care of those details. And I always tell this to people who call me and new inquiries. I'm like, listen, wedding days are going to be one of the best days of your life, but it's still another day. Reality's still there. Unfortunately, no matter how much planning you put into a day, it's not. Things are going to happen. Dad's going to forget his pants. There's going to be an accident on the highway. I had a wedding recently where I had to sew 4 bridesmaids into their bridesmaid dresses because they didn't try it on before the wedding. We come with a sewing kit. We come with a smile. We come with solutions because there's always going to be problems. And that's, to me, like, hiring a planner, especially a day of, takes away that worry. Like, okay, life will still happen on the day. And that's part of my job as a planner too, to prepare my clients, saying, I'm going to do my best to make your day as perfect as possible, but
Right.
you're also going to have to approach it realistically, remembering that this is still another day in a life. Like, no matter, like, you are like, this is going to be the best day ever, even on just a normal day, you know what I mean? Let alone like your wedding day. So if you go in with that mind frame that you're marrying your best friend, you're seeing your family, you hired a professional to take care of the details you just worked so hard, like $20,000 on, you spent $20,000 on this wedding.
Right.
It's worth having that person ensuring that 20,000 is following through. That's, to me, is insurmountable with the amount of money. You know what I mean? It's just providing that mindset. And sometimes that's true. And that's true with vendors as well. Like that's kind of what I say when you find things on certain websites or online and I haven't heard of a vendor before. The last thing I want to do is you having a freak out like 2 weeks before because you had a nightmare. I get so many texts like, I had a nightmare about my wedding last night, and I'm like,
oh, my 3 a.m. texts are my 3 a.m. texts are my favorite.
Like,
they're my favorite.
Sorry about your dream.
They're like, I just want to make sure you're still alive. I'm like, I'm still alive. Okay, I'm not going anywhere. Okay,
exactly. So your dream, we can't control your nightmares or your dreams, but we control the quality of service and like making sure we'll at least try to make you as happy as we possibly can, and that's what a day of provides. At least, I can't speak for other planners, but and I know Keith and Marcy, you guys are amazing in the industry as well. But, I believe day of services should start a few weeks before the wedding day, not the actual day.
100%. I think that anybody.
So many small things.
Well, so let me give a shout out to Gitana. She what used to be with the
Amazing Things.
Yeah, Gallery of Amazing Things. She's now doing her own thing. She is a real day of logistic person, but she is only day of. She is 6 hours, 2 to 8. That's it. That's all you get her for, not before. And I don't, and I think that that's perfect for but she's very upfront about it. She is very, very careful to make sure that her clients understand what their responsibilities are. But that's because she's a pro and she's been doing this, and she makes sure that she communicates exactly what her limitations are. And I think that unfortunately in our business, people are so used to saying, oh, of course I can do that. Oh, okay, I can do that. No, I'll take care of that. No. And it's not true. They don't put across exactly what the limitations are and exactly what the instructions are and what exactly they need. And they say, yes. But then when it really comes down to it and the labor comes into it and the timing comes into it, that they all of a sudden aren't there,
Right. And I feel like that could be applied to all vendors, you know what I mean? And that's kind of what I really, really discussed in my online course, like the questions to ask your vendor to make sure it's a right fit for you, because everyone's going to be different in the way of they want to plan their wedding, what exactly they're expecting from the wedding, how much communication you're expecting from your planner, or, even your musicians or entertainment. It's clear and concise understanding of what you're signing up for. And it's hard to know what questions to ask, especially in the beginning. You just were engaged. Like now you're just trying to go through the steps of like what to do, and everything online is so confusing because it's all mixed up. So many other people having, opinions about things. And when you have family provide the opinions and your friends are providing the opinions, and you have to consider 500 different opinions that you just, at the end of the day, can't please everyone. So the best way to do it, in my opinion, is to connect with your partner, discuss the best method and where you want to allocate your budget. Because like my first steps in wedding planning is figuring out your budget, your realistic budget based on your guest count. Those are like the top two things, at least to myself in planning. It's like you have to have realistic expectations, which we were talking about Pinterest. Like those expectations of having ceiling arrangements with, a certain budget, you're like, that's funny. That's a funny
so I'm so
you
glad
have that budget, honey.
I know, right? I'm actually so glad that Brooke was able to join in. So she is actually working. She's actually working with one of our clients for a surprise for the groom, by the way. And so she was off doing a
So I
secret.
do
So
apologize.
I know we can't say too
I
much
will
about it
say
because
this
they're
is the
probably
fastest
listening to
I've
the
ever
show,
gotten
but
painted in my life.
you know, but you know what I want to, but the reason I'm glad that she jumped in when she did is because Brooke is actually fairly new to the wedding industry on this idea, even though it's been a couple of years. But Brooke, what was kind of a surprising thing for you when you got into the wedding industry and you realized, shit, that I didn't realize that this was something that, you know, event planners actually had to deal with on this side? You know, was there anything that's kind of surprised you about like either timing or responsibility that you didn't think of beforehand?
Well, I will say the first thing is something that I never thought I'd be good at, and I thought it was something that like just it was common, like a common sense kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you're the one that told me, "Oh no, honey, you have talent, and not everybody can do this." So that was my first like aha moment. But there's been so many different instances. Most of them positive though, but there's been some, you know, couple of little
that it actually takes talent.
Me. Yeah.
You know, that it takes talent and knowledge to do this. I mean, it's amazing. I remember one of the first weddings that we did, and we were
I just told the story today.
So
I just told the story today.
No, you did not. Was this the fire alarm story?
Yep.
Oh my God. Okay. So we were at a temple in South Beach, and this I love this family. It was amazing.
And I think he's watching, so this is perfect.
Oh, even better. Well, so the kitchen didn't do a great job, and they actually burned something, and the fire alarms went off. But the music was loud, the lights were going crazy. And this is her first wedding, and this is how I knew that she was meant for this industry, because without blinking, she said, "Oh no, those are strobe lights. I don't
get those tied into the basement." Now has those alarms been going off?
Those aren't fire alarms. Those are strobe lights. I don't know what you're talking about.
But because those alarms weren't ringing, I was able to be like, snap. So yeah, and then
but you know,
Keith's like, "Yeah, you're stuck with me, gal.
You're destined for this." But you know, there is something to be said about rolling with the punches during an event and knowing how to, you know, stay on top of stuff even when things are about to fall apart.
Putting out fires, so to speak, right? That's what we're doing.
Yeah, like
that's really all we do.
Right, but
to make sure no one else knows.
Right,
exactly. But you know, I mean, most of our job is day of is rolling with what happens during the day, right, Bettina?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, I had a recent, and I talk about it often, a recent rooftop wedding where, you know, in Florida, we have to have the plan A, plan B, C, D, E, F, G for all the weather types. But I didn't ever really think about how strong winds can be next to the ocean. I'm like, my actual canopy, my huppa was not staying straight, and we're over A1A.
No.
And like my florist like holding on to the rail and the huppa, like, we can't do this huppa. I'm like, we're gonna do this huppa. I'm like holding it there, like flying in the wind as well. It's like 25 miles per hour wind, and it's usually 3 to 4. And like, so we had to like, you know, I'm like, what are we gonna do? Like, it's not rain.
Sandbags, water buckets. I mean,
yeah.
Hey, listen, you can always, you know, light up a little lantern and set it off over the ocean. And have
right. Like,
you know,
right over
options.
A1A too.
But you know, but I think that a lot of people don't understand that while you're in the hair and makeup chair, right, getting all your hair and makeup and having to deal with the personality issues of your sister, your mother, your aunt, that there's a whole nother world that is happening behind the scenes to make sure that your day comes together. And that is worth all the money in the world, is to have somebody that is focused on that is not emotionally involved with your family, right? I tell people all the time that I'm a meteorologist. I'm watching the hurricane. I can tell you where the hurricane is going and how to prepare for it, but you're in it. You're in it with your mother and your sister and your aunt, and they're all
outside looking in.
Right? There's a storm happening, but my job is to figure out how to make sure you're prepared for it and to make sure that everything is done before it hits, so to speak. I mean,
yeah.
Right. I mean, that's a big part of what we do. So when Bettina, when you're doing your course, you know, and teaching people how to do wedding planning on their own. Do you talk about the emotional issues that come up
Oh, yeah.
for a wedding?
I address it in like one of the first lessons. The biggest thing to me, as I mentioned, is creating your budget sheet, but also your guest count. Your guest count to me really deciphers your budget sheet, your realistic expectations of where your wedding's going to be. You want to be at the beach, that's going to cost more than being, off by the water. Or, I try to make it national. So if you're going to be in the mountains versus non-mountains. So I always say, if you have other contributing factors financially, make sure to clarify the boundaries. If they're going to be paying for a percentage, like families going to, or parents are going to be paying a certain percentage or all of it, how many decisions are they actually able to make? Because I always see that if those boundaries aren't or discussed in the beginning, it definitely comes up later on. Like they're trying to make decisions, then it's a clash, and then it's like it becomes so dynamic. And being in the middle as a wedding planner, it's like, let me know what you guys think you're gonna do later.
I didn't know, and all this and that. Girl, you knew. Honey,
You knew.
We don't tell you knew. You knew.
But you know
fully well knew.
But that's a hard part, actually, to be a bride and then to be financially responsible to multiple people in your family. I mean, I had a wedding that unfortunately had to cancel because one of the family members went through hardship because of COVID and was no longer to pay the 50% that they were going to be originally responsible for, and therefore their whole wedding planning changed. And then my job went from planning a wedding to being a psychologist to making sure that the family was still going to be okay with each other, even with this disappointment, that this wasn't personal, that this was caused by a third party. And again, I don't think that a lot of people realize that as an event planner, even as a day of logistic person, a lot of times a big part of our job is psychology.
Mediation.
Mediation.
Mediator. I'm like, I hear you. This is what you want. And what do you want? And how do we meet in the middle? And they're like, whose side are you on? I'm like, I'm in the middle.
All of them. I'm on his side, her side, that one side, this one side.
I'm like budget friendly, guys.
Right.
So we're
but
call me sideways.
But that's a hard place. That's a hard place to be. And again, I think that is worth the budget that, when the cost that when it comes to it is having a Switzerland. You need somebody that is not emotionally involved in order to help you make strong decisions in your wedding.
Missing full of holes. That's me.
Right. But because you'll have a sister or an aunt that really wanted a saxophone player during their ceremony, and therefore really encourage you to have a saxophone player during your ceremony. But is it really something that you really wanted for yourself, or was this something that you really was listening to somebody else?
Or got like super wasted at 8:30 and got real bent about it, and then brought the whole situation up about that not happening.
Right.
And then the rest of them.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like, are you really listening to yourself, or you're listening to your family members and their wants and desires because of what happened in their life? And I think event planners,
others' weddings. Like sometimes I'll have people text me right after attending a wedding. They're like, "Do we have this?" And I'm like, "Do you want it? Like, is that what you want it, or is it just a good friend?"
Are you quite
sure? It's all about appeasing everybody else, but you have to take into account that the couple this is their wedding and their moment to shine, not somebody else's. So it's up to to the professionals to kind of hone it in and kind of remind them what they're there for.
Right.
Well,
it's not about appeasing somebody else.
Right?
Yeah, but remind them why they're there and remind them what their original vision was. And that sometimes is worth all the money in the world. So because we're about halfway through the program.
We know better. This is what we do.
This is what we do. But so Bettina, like, let me ask you, what kind of services do you offer? Because I know personally that I offer full planning, partial planning, and day of plus, right? I don't offer just day of. It's a day of plus because I feel like everybody always needs at least some insight or, some type of reference. Yeah, exactly. So, when somebody is looking into these kind of services, what kind of things can they be expecting? Because sometimes it's difficult for me to explain to my day of plus clients that I'm not your partial planner. I'm not your plan. I'm here to advise, but I'm not here to negotiate your contracts. And I'm not here to, and that sometimes is a very fine line to explain to your clients. How do you do it?
Very clearly on the phone call. I try to explain, those three exact packages. We have the full service, we have the partial, we have a day of plus that assists with finding 1 to 2 vendors. And that's something we were discussing earlier. Every vendor is going to name their packages differently. So it's also hard in the industry to kind of clarify which includes what. And does the day of include welcome bags? That's a big question too. And to me, it's like welcome bags can be a variation, a huge variation. Like it'd be super simple tote bag of items from Costco, or like super detailed water bottle with specific label and specific packaging with labels on that. So it really depends the wedding. But when we discuss like our full service, we're fully comprehensive in everything we do. We have all the contracts discussed,
Right.
but it's hard to explain the difference between like the partial versus day of. And so what I always say with the day of is that we do nothing with contracts. I have a preferred vendor list I can send to them if they like to see it, but I'm not part of that process,
Right.
And I do mention like if they have a very like open like idea of what they want for the wedding, if they have a quick question, like, should I have my bridesmaids wear gold jewelry? That could be easily answered. But when I have a day of client reach out, which is a constant thing, asking about their timelines months before the wedding, and I have no idea what's going to go in the day yet, I say, I'm so sorry. That requires me to know way more than what you're asking.
Especially if you haven't planned all that.
Right.
Yeah.
You have your hands on it.
So let me ask you a question on that. So if you have a client that, let's say that whether or not it's the day of plus or month before, or you have a full service client, do you have a number? Do you explain to your clients that there's a maximum number of meeting appointments in person, or if there is a maximum amount of hours that you're spending on phone calls with them and such? Do you have all of that arranged with them in advance? And that goes to both of you, I would say.
It's an interesting topic because I know other planners do. Personally, I just don't know how many hours I would dedicate to the wedding, especially with COVID in mind. I've had 3 postponements, from the same client and unforeseen things. So I haven't really dedicated a certain amount. With day of packages, we're 6 weeks before the wedding. That's it. That's pretty simple. No contracts. Like, we provide our DOC form beforehand, so they're prepared at that 6-week mark. But the moment we reach that 6-week mark, that's when we become your planners. But when it comes to our full versus partial, the meetings, and same with the day of, we only do, if you want a meeting, we could, but we typically do a phone call. But the full and partial, I don't really keep track of the hours I do per client because there's so many different details for each wedding. I know every planner is different in that respect, though. I know some of them have definitely certain hours they dedicate to weddings and keep track of that.
Right.
But that's when I expanded my team to be able to accommodate said hours. So.
Well, I'm kind of the same way. It's like, I feel like it's a law of averages. I'm going to have some of my partial planning clients that take less hours and more some that take more. And so it's kind of a balance. Right. But at the end of the day, I have to be very careful about my day of plus clients versus my partial planning and my full planning clients, because my day of, no offense, but my day of plus people are getting a very good deal. I mean, yes. I always tend to do way more than I should ever for my day of plus. And I literally just had a recent moment where somebody asked me to do some research on some rehearsal dinner options. And I had to very politely respond, like, it would probably be more efficient if you reached out to them directly, because that's really not in my purview of my day of plus contract. And that was hard for me to say. I mean, as people in the event industry, we're so used to saying, how can I help you? Mm-hmm. Tell me how I can help you.
I think it's a tough spot to be in, because this is your business, and you want that 5-star review, and everything has to be perfect for them, as anybody would want it. But then it's like, well, where do you draw the line, and where do you reel back? Because, Keith, you know how I am. Like, I want it all right now. But if this is what the deal is, you got to roll with the punches. So if you're good,
right.
We're good.
But that's the thing is that, there's so many variables, and especially right now with COVID and all these things. I mean, we've had to almost be the babysitters of so many different weddings that have gone through second, third, fourth change of dates. And many of us as event planners have just done it without charging an extra fee, which is, bad on us for not having value in our own time. But that's part of why we do what we do in this business, is because
right?
It's hard to be firm and
We learned a lot of
sometimes,
lessons 2020.
we did. We learned a lot of lessons. And so I'm going to go actually back to your classes in your 40 hours. Do you talk about like the expectations in case somebody decides that, I do need a planner? What should my expectations be?
I do. I do talk about planning packages and the differences between them and where you are with planning and if it's what part of the package is necessary for you. And I also provide questions to ask the planner. Like I know Keith, you and I are similar in the fact that we don't necessarily keep track of hours, but I know other planners who definitely say only this amount of hours of this amount of meetings. So to be sure that if you're a person who prefer phone calls or emails or even in-person meetings I feel are not as popular pre-COVID as post-COVID because you have FaceTime now and those type of options.
Right.
But to be clarify like what you are expecting in a planner and where you are right now with the planning and how much is needed. I think with every vendor, you should at least have a phone call. And I always, when I have potential client calls, I always like to clarify the logistics of it. And I know planners do the same where, maybe I'm not a good fit, or maybe I am a good fit, or maybe this is the right route to take. And I try to do that in the course as well. Like, what are the best steps to take to make sure this is the right fitting planner,
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part. It's that, if you're talking, if you're a bride, and you basically go to the knot, right? Everybody goes to the knot, or unless it's a referral, which is, I'm always a big fan of referrals. But, if you go to the knot and you look at the top, 8 planners, I mean, I finally just got into the top 8 after 2 years of the damn waiting list. I know. Hello.
Cost me a consecutive best wedding.
I know, but cost me a fortune every month. I mean, but it doesn't mean that those top 8 are the best planners in South Florida, and nor does it mean that they're actually going to do a really good job for you. And I look at those and I think, do I trust them? And I go back to the idea that, I almost like the idea of trying to push people to your 40-hour, course, because I feel like you don't know what you don't know. I'm going to go back to that phrase. You don't know what you don't know. And it almost seems like it should be something that we encourage our clients to do.
Wherever you go, there you are.
It needs to be helpful. It's a helpful resource tool that's not out there. There's no online course that really goes into the wedding planning and teaches you like, these are the steps. These are like, this is what you're about to go into. This is all the time you're going to be spending. If this is like the things you need to do in order to ensure a good day. If you're going to take the easy route, there's most likely going to be error, and you're going to feel that on the wedding day, and there's too late to fix it at that point. And you're going to like just remember it too. For the rest of your life, not to be dramatic, but
there's a reason why you hire a wedding planner.
Yeah, but I love the and I'm gonna. So I know this is probably like gonna push more business to you, but the thing is that I actually believe that this is a good thing. Education is never a bad thing when it comes to your clients. It never is a bad thing. There are a million people out there, and we are a good fit for a lot of them, but we're not going to be a good fit for everybody. But I will always encourage people to at least get some knowledge before you dive into this. And that means that you're spending a couple of hours with me on a Zoom call to go over your wedding and talk about the possibilities and the options, which is pretty typical, by the way. I typically
understand what this whole day is going to entail and look like.
Yeah, like I
That's a
have.
lot.
That's amazing. That's
It
like
is. I mean,
that's
I
a good
have.
education.
But you know, I have an onboarding session that is not attached to my actual client. So in other words, I have my wedding contract, but that's separate from my onboarding, which is typically a 2-hour session. It's $100, whatever.
Wow,
you know,
that's a great deal. Honestly,
right?
you're in the right direction.
I
But-
just got
but-
tossed in the water and sink or swim, and apparently I'm a really good dog paddle girl.
But you know,
I'm still here.
but you know, the idea is to at least listen to what they're where they are at the moment, and to see if I'm a good fit, to see if do they really need me, you know,
Right.
can they do this themselves, you know, and then again, I'm going to go back to your course. I feel like it's an important resource in our community to have that available.
Yeah,
Right.
it's more of a helpful tool and it helps people understand. Like I feel like everyone's like, oh, is it like the movies? And like
Oh, we talked about that.
So
Jennifer
fascinating.
Lopez. Yeah.
yeah, like
The franchise.
no, you can't solve everything from your best.
Right.
Although I love that.
Oh,
Oh,
don't
I
you
want
wish?
100. I want 100 of you right now,
I know. I mean,
just to beforehand have this.
you
So
mean
me and
high
Keith would be like,
heels aren't sneakers? What do you mean?
Yeah, what do you mean? What do you mean you can't solve an issue of a crying mom?
feels like a sneaker, looks like a pump, honey.
Right? That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. So.
You know, and then so what about you? What do you do for your onboarding process when somebody calls you and it's a brand new bride and typically it's an email process, right? So you give them the standard email. This is my pricing, yada. But your first conversation with them, what are some of the most important questions that you feel need to be asked as an event planner to get as much information from the client as possible? What are some of your big questions that
Questions I ask the client or they ask me?
you ask the client?
That I ask? Well,
Yeah.
I always recommend a phone call. I don't like to send blank how much my pricing is because I like to really realistically allocate for the clients because I just feel like I said before, there's no wedding policing. There's no guides online that are pretty up to date. Like, you know, there's some books out there that are helpful, but it's hard to really specify for a wedding. So, you know, I like to do a phone call with them. And the biggest details to me is realistic expectations. If you're going to have 250 people at your wedding, you're already limited in regard to venue spaces. So
Right.
like, you know, so creating that realistic expectation, having that phone call saying, okay, you want 250, you're already limited. Like you cut out half the venues you could potentially have having over 200 or 220. You know, so creating that realistic expectation, guest sounds huge to me. Budget, which I've mentioned before. Sometimes I don't even ask total budget, but like a realistic, like how many people are you really expecting for a certain number? And then from there, I'm like, okay, what areas are you going to be into? Kind of how I go through my course is how I do my phone calls. What are
What's
you
your
really?
dream?
Pardon?
What's your dream?
What's your dream?
Right,
First
right.
one,
What's your
what's
dream?
your dream?
Yeah, so that's what to me is important is that realistic expectation because they see all these things on movies, they see these things on Pinterest, and they just have this like Cinderella views, and then the reality of it is it comes at a cost, and maybe it's not something you've saved enough or you don't want to take a loan out or, you know, and then there's insurance and there's plan B. I'm sure we all have had the experience of the destination client who's like, I'm going to be by the beach. And then you're like, you know, there's wind. And if you have
Wind and rain and yes.
And-
And
Yeah.
then
Sure
the
is.
virus doesn't show up at the last minute.
Right, yeah. Or like, we don't need a tent. Oh, that's not a
That's my favorite.
client for you too. Yeah, like to me, it's like I'll have people not from Florida, and they're like, "Do we really need a tent?" And I'm like, yeah, you do. We really, you need it as a backup. It's
Pack
just,
two, mama. Pack two.
yeah, you need an option to be indoor,
But-
especially with COVID. We've been having a lot of increase for residential wedding, which
Right.
are amazing. We can be really creative with it and even save by venue, but then you have a lot more logistics like a generator or, you know, like making sure there's room for the kitchen for the catering and like if there's enough bathrooms, like
Right.
there are small
Well,
details.
So question for you. So, you know, when you talk about the fact that you're looking for realistic expectations, one of the major questions that feels like a major drawback to the couple is, what is your budget? I feel like that quote, "What is your budget?" makes everybody cringe. And it does two things. First of all, it makes them feel like, why are you asking? And second of all, like, right. And second is my wedding planner trying to suck every dime out of me? And the answer is no.
No,
I'm not. That's not my job. Exactly.
If you call Keith Willard and you call the right one,
or you know what?
Where is it? I mean, where is it?
But there are planners that are very like that, though. It's like very super business, and it's like, where does the personality come in? Where does
Exactly. But I feel like if you need to call a couple of event planners and be ready to answer that question.
Having your budget.
Be realistic.
Ask if you're comfortable with sharing your budget. I'd appreciate so I can lead you in the right direction. But if you are not comfortable, and something that's very common, and it's fine with me, I am a planner who likes to stay within budget, but I'll have a couple tell me a budget before hiring me and then a different one after hiring me. And that's a fine thing. Like you added an extra 20,000, whatever, 30. It's fine. Like you do whatever you want. Like,
if I'm going to throw out thousands, I'm going to do a little homework before I pick up that phone. I promise you that, or get on that keyboard.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, to start, do something. Have a little bit of an outline or a plan before.
Some kind of guidance.
But you have to have an idea of what you want to spend. I mean, I'm either going to guide you to the Grateful Palette, or I'm going to guide you to Four Seasons, depending on what your budget and your expectations are.
What's your fantasy?
I kind of liken it to putting on a wedding dress and it being way, way over your budget and you fall in love with it. Why would you want to put something on that you're falling in love with when it's totally out of your range?
Right.
Being honest is our ability is to help you. I mean, our goal is to help you get what you want and need within your realistic vision and budget.
Well, because go ahead. No, Bettina first.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I've even had client calls where I've said, okay, realistically, maybe it's not within your budget to get a full service, but maybe a partial. So I would say, look for venues in this area that can accommodate this. And maybe instead of a full liquor, do a beer and wine. I'll give them tips even after, because we are doing this because we care about people, right? We're like, people. We love hospitality. We want to help people. And at the end of the day, if you're not telling us the budget is actually going to be a downfall for yourself, because we're just going to try to help you get what you want. And if it's not what you're actually wanting, it's not going to be what you're going to get.
And within the first 5 to 7 minutes in that conversation, I guarantee you, if they have not brought up the money, we already know kind of what they want. And then that's when the games begin.
And that's the thing is that I never want it to be a game with our clients, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, and I've said this multiple times, I'm out of your budget. I am so out of your budget. I do not want to waste your time, but what I will do is spend the next hour talking to you about what I think you should be thinking about and the venues that you should be looking at based on what you've told me. And I find that's good karma. I think that's just karma.
Of course.
You come back.
Keith, do you remember what was I had one concern when Keith offered me the position that I have. I had one concern and only one concern. And what was that?
I don't remember.
Oh my
God.
Kickbacks.
Oh yes, because I don't accept kickbacks. So I don't accept kickbacks from any of my vendors or any of my venues. I'm very upfront.
If we get it, we give it to our bride and groom.
Yeah. So whatever discount we get, we give it to our bride and groom. And I just like to be upfront.
It was an integrity test for Keith, and he passed it, and that's what means everything to me, because I was taught growing up that costs you nothing, but that's your complete livelihood in your word. It means millions. So that was the only question I had for Keith when he offered me the position I have, and
But you
Here
know,
we
I
are.
think that's really important for couples out there in general to understand that yes, the wedding industry is a wild, wild west kind of environment, but people that are in the event planning industry and have been in it, and I think that's important, have been in it for years, right? That have a history, that have great recommendation that go back multiple years, that we're in it to help people,
And that's where you get a discount from that relationship, and that's a completely different subject to me,
Right.
and a different kind of ideal.
but you know what I mean.
But it
you know,
basically it was an integrity question. Basically, it was integrity for me, and that's what
But-
it was, because I didn't know Keith that well. I worked with 2 events with you, and
Right.
I
But I
fell
think-
in love
but-
with Keith. I thought he was amazing, but I needed to.
But I-
Because I
but-
do have a resume and a background, so there was that one little thing
Yeah.
I needed to know. And what's up?
So when
And I'm
we're
not
when we're
throwing shade
talking about,
anywhere,
when we're
but-
talking about clients, when we're talking about brides, and they're coming into new, and coming into this firsthand, I think it's really important to explain to them as a group, as us as an industry, on the whole, we're here to help you.
Right. We're on
We
your
do
team.
this because we
We're
love
on your
you.
team.
That's
We're
what
on
we
your
do.
team.
Yes.
That's it.
You like
Exactly.
that is, and that's what I say too, because I don't take commissions as well. Any type of discounts I can receive, like instead of receiving that commissions, I apply it to the clients because I'm fee based, and I think that's important to also separate, because some planners are percentage based.
Yep.
So I'm personally fee based, and I tell them, like, you pay
too.
my fee and that is it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take any kickbacks from from other vendors, because I am fee based. I'm charging the price of my quality and my expertise, and I don't need to take those kickbacks for that exact reason. But everyone's very different in regard to how they operate their business. I know that is something to ask the planner, and it's
right up
their.
front.
I know some do, some don't.
Sorry about it, not sorry, but-
either.
I'm not.
But I
just a
think that-
pretty
I think
face, I got
that's
3 brain cells.
Yeah, but I think that's important to actually ask right up front. It's like,
For
what
sure.
is your fee? Is it a fee based or is it commission based? Because that will make a huge difference. I know some planners that are very specific about the vendors that they will show their clients, because those are the vendors that will give them a kickback, 20%, 10%. And if you ask, they're
I
going
don't
to tell
mind
you the truth.
kickback. It's what's done with that kickback. And
Well,
what I
no.
always say, Keith, don't be greedy. Pigs get slaughtered. I've been
She
saying
does.
this for a year and a half on the show.
All the
That
time.
little bit.
But
All these things don't cost money. It's just integrity. It's just that kind of, what kind of a person am I dealing with right now? What kind of ideals do you have? What kind of morals? And to me, that's the stuff that I was raised on. I'm old school. I'm not going to tell anybody my real age, but I'm an old school girl. And
But
so
you
those are
know-
the things that matter to me.
I feel like that if
Honestly.
you ask that question right up front, that should be one of the first questions that you ask your event planners. It's like, tell me about your fees. Tell me about, are you percentage based? Are you fee based? And again, we're here to help. We're not here to hide stuff.
Yeah, team you. Like, honestly, that's a consistent thing I say throughout the whole process. I'm like, I'm on your team. Even though I tell you that's not in budget, it's not because I hate you. It's because I'm trying to support you to stay within budget. I'm always on your team. And, at the end of the day, a phone call is so important with your vendor, so you can see if you connect, and I do a lot on my Instagram stories, and this amazing opportunity to speak to you right now today. I'm behind the veil. It's like you get to know the personalities as well. So you're working with this person for a year, 2 years, however long, you want to get along with them as well. So clarifying everything in the beginning is really important, and finding out that commission versus fee base is also very important. I know commissions and the kickbacks was very popular
80s.
in past generations, right?
80s.
Listen, the business is the
past
business.
generations, it was
It's
way
been
more
like this for how long it's been for. And I'm not really trying to sound. I probably sound really super shady, but I'm not. But there's a certain portion of that I am correct about, and I'm like, no, this. I don't want to work for you if this is how this is going to be, because to me that's a whole different experience, and my job changes at that point. To be honest.
So what do you think about like gut reaction? You feel like people should trust their gut reaction when they're talking to an event planner? Like if they feel like this is a little shady, move on kind of thing?
I think the gut is really, I trust my gut. I'm thankful, knock on wood, to be where I am today. Because I've always trusted my gut feelings, and I truly think, and also vibes. I mean, like, obviously I'm new generation, but like, you gotta vibe with the person. You're gonna be talking to them often. You've gotta laugh a little, because although we are business of, professionals, there's sometimes they get the little like gray areas where it's like,
Yeah.
tell my aunt's cousin not to wear that dress because it shows her tattoos. No, I can't. No, I can't. I can't get involved in that way, like,
Right.
but if it's like, talking to your mom to discuss like maybe the best way to pick the linen of the centerpiece,
Full
like
coverage foundation, not sheer over the tattoo.
Right, exactly.
Like, that's
those two colors don't match.
I mean, on the wedding day, we do have keywords for situations, like if they want us to evacuate someone in the room. But it's making sure you feel comfortable through that process, because it's gonna get nitty gritty, no matter how much. And that's a disclaimer I give in my first phone calls with clients too. It's like, I will take care of everything with my full service, every single detail of your wedding, but but when it comes to your family, I'm there to support. I'm not going to lie for you. Like, I've had people say, oh my God, I heard something the other day. It was so funny. Apparently this bride didn't want to tell her groom the real price of how much she was paying for her florist. So she was going to Publix and taking out these gift cards.
Oh, you've been talking to Jay Morgan. You've been talking to Jay Morgan. And the only reason I say that is because, unfortunately, she had to close the doors. Right. So but Jay Morgan, I know that story. Oh my God. That is it is absolutely 100% true. Not that I know this client, but that is 100% true.
Yeah, I didn't hear it from Jay Morgan. I heard it last week from someone else. You did something different. My face was like turning red. I was like, don't do that to your
Oh my God.
Don't do that. That's gonna be so sticky, because like,
oh my God, later not this is the best episode ever.
No, but seriously, that is the actual thing. So this is the story, is that the mother of the bride didn't want to tell her husband how much she really wanted to spend on flowers. And so it was around Thanksgiving time. And so what she was doing is she was going to get Publix gift cards and then adding them to her normal grocery bill week after week after week. So
I don't shade her for that, though. That's just love bottom trying to make things fabulous.
$100, $100, $100.
What I will say, though, Keith, well, you remember this little one?
It was a little fascinating. I have to say, it was a little fascinating.
I've got the mom telling the son, like, "Hey, this is it. Like, we can hit it and go. Like, this is it. Like, so you're walking or running." And I'm starstruck and dumbfounded, because I'm like, I'm literally a foot in front of your face.
No, seriously, that's literally just one story of a million that any event planner can tell you.
I think I press play on the GoPro, honey.
Oh my God! So Bettina, tell us a little bit about how somebody can go about getting onto your classes, to sign up for your classes. How do they do that?
Thank you for this opportunity to share it. But yeah, I mean, you can go into my website. You can reach out to me on info@busybeesevents.com, info@busybees.com, or reach out on Instagram, and I can send you my website, but it's on busybeesevents.com. It takes you straight to the course. When you see it, I have a video. I explain what's in it. You can definitely check it out if you just want that educational tool to go in the right direction of even, after that, hiring a planner, or see what's best for your wedding. But yeah, that's the best way to check it out for sure. And thank you for that shout out. I appreciate it.
Well, and
at least call her if you don't want to get some knowledge, get your feet wet, know what you're getting into before you call us.
It's not like the movies.
And by the way, it is on the ticker tape below us. So Bettina, thank you again for being part of Behind the Veil this week. That's kind of an hour. But next
week,
week,
sorry I was late, but it was so great to see you, and I love your hat.
Thank you.
I know, I love that. So next week, we actually have Carolyn Mariani, who is the brand ambassador for Bottega. Ooh, hello, look at that pretty bottle. So next week, we're going to talk all about like champagne and Prosecco and pairings. So join us next week with Carolyn Mariani, with the brand ambassador from Bottega. So we're really excited about that. But for today, everybody say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you so much.